What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and once again, I have another album review for you. And this one, I've been kind of eager to go over. And it's strange because it's a re-recording, and for the most part, I don't really care much for re-recordings. It kind of depends on the band, and I'll get into that. But this one, I absolutely had to go over just because I finally got a chance to see these guys, and it was a mind-blowing experience, and I've been a fan of this band for a long time, and even in a re-recording, I feel like there's just a expect the unexpected sort of vibe anyway. So today I'm going to go over the latest offering from Sigh. I Saw the World's End, Hangman's Hymn 2025. This also came out on the 13th of June on Peaceful Records. This band formed in 1990 in Tokyo, Japan. Now, as I said, this is a re-recording of their sixth album, Hangman's Hymn. I absolutely love that album, so, already vastly familiar with this material. But I've been a Sigh fan since probably like the mid to late 2000s when I heard the album Imaginary Sonicscape, which absolutely melted my frontal lobe and left me kind of a drooling wreck in terms of like processing what I just listened to. But that was the album that got its foot in the door, and then I believe it was probably Hangman's Hymn that I jammed after that. I was like, okay, I think this is starting to make a little bit more sense now. Baseline, this band is hard to describe. They have gone through multiple phases in their career, starting off as like almost like autopsy worship and then moving into, I guess what you would call like avant-garde black metal. And there's elements of thrash. It's progressive at times. Sigh are kind of legit their own thing. That is largely due to their frontman and main composer, Mirai. That dude is just on some other level when it comes down to composition, musicianship. The dude plays like almost every instrument in the band, or at least he could. I mean, he might have throughout the course of the album. I don't know if he's played drums. He's probably played drums. Fuck it. He can play everything. But I thought this was an interesting one in terms of like a re-recording. And again, when it comes down to re-recordings, they are generally very divisive amongst metal fans, at least particularly. There has to be like some justification, at least in most of our heads, for a re-recording. Like, was it recorded improperly, in terms of the first run? Is it something to like, kind of get around getting the rights back from a label that wants way too much money? And I guess there's maybe like a loophole in the contract that you can just re-record it. And by that, the rights to that version goes to the current label. I don't know. The original album came out on The End Records, which has been largely inactive for a while now, and this might have been something that they did because they wanted to get the rights back, and that may have only been part of the reason. The lineup of this band has changed over the years multiple times. Again, Mirai has always been the central figure in the band, but even Hangman's Hymn was before the lovely Dr. Mechanable actually joined the band too. So this was also a chance to have his lovely wife on this album, who does, amazing vocals and also plays sax incredibly well. And of course, there are some other players on here as well that are new to the Sigh fold, or at least one of them is officially. Their new guitarist, Nozuma Wakai, who joined in 2022, he wasn't even on Shiki, so I couldn't even judge his playing on that one. I believe that was all Mirai in terms of guitars on there, at least for the most part. And session drummer Mike Heller, who put in an absolute clinic on Shiki. I think that was like probably one of my favorite drum performances I heard that year. So with a different lineup here, and, a different caliber of musicians, I would say, this had me kind of interested. And kind of the big wild card factor were, well, Mike Heller for sure, because, the guy has drummed for a ton of amazing bands. He's technically proficient. He's, hyper aggressive, very blasty drummer. Like, he has like a tech death almost approach, but there's a lot more to his wheelhouse as well. And Nozuma was a wild card because I had never heard him actually play on the albums. I only got to see him play live, and he absolutely dominated. So before I even listened to this, there were some interesting variables that I was like kind of accounting in my head. And believe me, those variables come into play. This is faster. This is more technical. It's not necessarily like a full-on like re-recording in terms of like doing everything in the spirit of the original album. This is approaching these songs differently, but retaining the core of the songs. Now, this album's broken up into 3 acts, and the first act, honestly, it's kind of my favorite because it's the punky, just very DB-driven, thrashy songs. Introitus, Kyrie, Inked in Blood, one of my absolute favorite Sigh songs. I just love that song. And Me Devil. The original versions have like this very punky, kind of just crusty vibe to them. A lot of thrashy riffs, The guitars were like hyper distorted, real sizzly, and the drums were kind of like straightforward D beats. Well, drums and guitars definitely changed on this. The guitar work on here, Nozu is definitely a different guitarist than the original guitarist that was on Hangman's Hymn. A lot more intricacy in his playing, a lot more like palm muting. You can hear a lot of the nuances in the playing that were, maybe buried on the original, or there was stuff that this guy added. And I was kind of going back and forth between the two albums because I own Hangman's Hymn. Again, I've been jamming that one forever. And of course, like at the core, the melodies are very much the same. But again, it's how this guy plays them. And that is throughout this album. There's just way more intricacy, like way more variety, even in like the style of playing. Like even when it comes down to like the leads on here, they're bigger, they're brighter, they're a little bit more bold. I would say that Nozomu's like pedigree, at least from what I got on this album, really comes out of like thrash metal, and it's like more technical thrash. His playing is just a lot more tight, and I would say like a hell of a lot more like flashy overall. And then you have Mike Heller, and Mike Heller did an absolutely amazing job making this album sound even more technical and even more bonkers. And that also kind of plays in the guitar work too, because Mike went off. He did not stick to the traditional patterns, the original drum work on here, which the drum work in the original is solid. I like it. It's a little bit more like kind of meat and potatoes, a lot of D beats. It kind of just like sticks in that pocket overall. You get some good thrashy gallops and the occasional like blast beats on it. But Mike Heller is a different caliber drummer. And right from the rip with Introitus Kyrie, blast beats. Blast beats, crazy turnovers. It's still playing a lot of those crazy melodies with the weird orchestration and Mirai shrieking like 1,000 different demons. But his drum work is just absolutely insane. Maybe too busy occasionally. Like, there were some moments where I really kind of wish they would just kind of like settle down into that, D beat. Just because those songs I think are fun and headbangable. Like, those are probably the most like stripped down songs on the entire album, especially Inked in Blood. Inked in Blood, I like the blast beat accents on it. I thought it was cool sounding, but I like the fact that that song is just predominantly a D beat ripper. And there are some moments where he does kind of like restrain himself from, accenting everything or throwing in like these absolutely just nuts fills and turnovers. But overall, like the drum performance on here is just night and day. And as I said, that kind of plays in the guitar work because with all these like clever turnovers and accents and such, there's more for the guitarist to kind of like play off of. So like I said, this isn't necessarily like just a flat out re-recording where they didn't approach anything any differently than the original. There's a lot more going on to the point where, the vibe of the album is just kind of changed a little bit. Like this isn't as dark and raw and murky as the original. It almost kind of comes across as like symphonic, technical, blackened thrash, but it works. Like this still has that same vibe overall. In terms of like production, I feel like, there's definitely some things that have changed. Drum production, again, night and day. The original drums sounded way more raw. And even the guitars too. The guitars on here have a richer, more full sound. And again, the way this guy is playing, you can really hear like elements of that tone that, maybe in the original you couldn't hear because, again, it was a very fuzzy, very raw sounding tone, which I absolutely loved. But the overall production here is way more crisp sounding and a lot more warm sounding, especially in like some of the slower moments when you get down to like, the doomier moments that show up on Rex Tremende, I Saw the World's End, which the tracking on here is also a little bit different. The shorter transitional tracks or interlude tracks were actually separated this time rather than being part of the song. Like Die Israel is not part of the Master's Malice. It is its own separate track, which, for me, kind of makes Die Israel a little bit more skippable, which kind of sucks in a way because when it comes down to this album in particular, at least the original, I listened to it all the way through. It's a really well-paced album, and those interludes are kind of cool as they build into the tracks, and I kind of like the fact that they aren't skippable because they're well done. But here, being a separate track, I can do my usual thing and skip the interlude part. The symphonic elements also sound more crisp too, and again, like the lack of mud on here lets some of those parts really shine, especially on the beginning of In the Devil's Arms. There's that fluttering string bit, which is a little bit less detectable on the original version, but here it's clear as day, and because, the guitar tone is, a lot more clean sounding, but again, still rich, still full, still got a good solid crunch to it, but it doesn't get in the way of the other elements. And that's where I could argue that cleaner production here, it kind of favors this band because of all the different elements in here. You have, again, symphonic parts, multiple vocal takes, tons of layering. You had, choirs in the original one. And I believe on this one, you also have Dr. Mechanical going back and forth with Mariah, which is an element that I love about this band. It's really become kind of like one of their definable tropes. And honestly, live, it works so damn well. And vocally, in terms of the production, it really hasn't changed that much. They kind of sit in the same spot. Mariah still sounds the same. He still has his goblin-esque shriek and some lower growls and such. And again, I can kind of hear points where I feel like Dr. McCampbell is kind of trading off. They do occasionally have similar voices. That chick can growl her guts out. I still remember years ago seeing an article about her when she was recording vocals for, I forget which album, but she insisted on doing all her vocal recording naked. And I guess she was also drinking blood and eating bugs in the studio. I really wasn't sure whether to be turned on or grossed out, so I was kind of halfway in between. But yeah, she's definitely a huge part of this. And again, the vocal dynamics were on point. And I'll be honest, pretty much everything about this I loved. And that kind of goes back to the whole thing about re-recordings, because most of the time I find re-recordings, just kind of annoying. And again, for the most part, a lot of the original stuff that I feel like a lot of bands do the whole re-recording of, it seems kind of unnecessary. I don't care for the whole Exodus re-recording of Bonded by Blood. I listened to it once. It's you know what? Completely unnecessary. The original sounds fine. But there are cases where you can make an argument that a re-recording might be a little bit more necessary. The whole case with Cavalera doing those early Sepultura albums. Honestly, there are points where I like those more than the original. The production was not the best in those early Sepultura albums. And while yes, you can say Sepultura kind of lost a little bit in terms of that kind of almost blackened thrash sort of vibe that was on those early albums, namely Bestial Devastation and Morbid Tales. But those re-recordings captured a flat-out death thrash vibe that was awesome. And honestly, Max's vocals were a lot better on that. So sometimes in these re-recordings, you can capture something that was maybe buried or just wasn't recorded properly, or maybe wasn't played properly on the original that you really wanted to get out in a different version here. And I feel like there's a lot of that justification here on this album. Not that Sigh needed any justification to do anything. This band, their whole career is kind of predicated on doing whatever the hell they want and just being unique as hell about it. But one of the main things that I really took away from this is I like that this isn't just a flat out re-recording note for note. That makes it sound more unnecessary. This was a re-recording with a lot of reimagining of songs in terms of song structures, transitions. The core of the songs, still 100% there. I was fucking singing along the entire fucking time. And then, again, went back and listened to the original again. And guess what? I love both. Both are solid. And honestly, I feel like I could put on either for different reasons. There's still something captured in the original vibe that, the re-recorded vibe just doesn't have. But this re-recorded one has a lot of elements that I feel really got brought out to the forefront that the original maybe just didn't do as well. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. And I would probably give Hangman's Hymn 4 stars as well, maybe 4.5. I don't know. I love the shit out of that album. But I dig this. And again, I'm always kind of on the fence when it comes down to re-recordings, but I feel this band wasn't going to screw it up. Again, this whole band's thing is about pushing musical boundaries and creating strange music for people that just want to hear, I don't know, bands that are just kind of out there. They don't fit in any boxes, really. And they capture that really well with a re-recording of an earlier Weird album. In some cases, it's even more strange and more bombastic. This album is definitely faster. It's definitely, more aggressive in points. But in terms of the overall album length, it's about the same. Yes, I will argue that this version does not have the raw, gritty appeal of the original. But I'll say if you listen to this version, you're going to hear things that, kind of pop out a little bit more. And, it'll make you go back and listen to the original version hey, that could have really worked there. I wonder why they didn't do it. I like that about this re-recording. it gives me a reason to listen to it. Like, I can't just say, like, well, yeah, it's the same fucking album. I'll just go listen to the original one and maybe not even pick this one up. Spoiler alert, I'm definitely picking this up. This kind of sits on the fence between a re-recording and a reimagining. Again, they knocked it out of the park in terms of like the playing on here. Mike Heller is just a fucking monster on here. And his drum performance on here really does propel this. That and Nozomu's guitar work being able to match up with that killer riff work on here. Again, it's more intricate. There's more, flashiness to it. This re-recording is absolutely fun as fuck. And I mean, if you're a long-time Sigh fan, I honestly think you should get it because it does capture something different from the original. And I mean, if you got the original, you can still have the original too. Again, I don't know if the reasoning behind re-recording this album was to like get the rights back from the End Records or, something like that. Or it was just them going, you know what, we could have done some things a little bit better here. Let's just kind of try something different. Either way, I think the results speak for themselves. And again, if you just like bonkers out there, like over the top metal, Sigh is just a must listen. I can't think of really any other bands to compare them to, like offhand. Like, I mean, it has like the theatricality and over the topness of bands like Sulphur Aeon, but also like Mr. Bungle's weirdness. Just listen to Sigh. Like, listen to Sigh in general, but yeah, definitely check this out. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you were new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They were only 99 cents, and our Lone Park is doing a members-only live stream, which we will do at some point this month. We just have to figure out when and what we'll talk about, which, I mean, I don't know if it'll be themed, but it'll probably just be us rambling about really dumb stuff. Either way, membership's the main way to support the channel now. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our hats and t-shirts. That is linked down below. And there's a join button down there if you'd like to join up and, I don't know, talk about how weird Sigh is. That could actually cover an entire live stream just with how bonkers this band is. I don't even own all their albums yet. I still gotta get a couple more just to complete the weirdness collection. And of course, thank you to everyone that's liked, subscribed, followed. Again, it means the world to us, and seeing this channel grow is just still pretty unbelievable. We have a lot of content planned for you. Again, I've been doing these solo reviews, so I give the other guys time to catch up on stuff. We do have some bigger videos we're going to shoot here soon. So stay tuned for those. And of course, one more big thank you because you guys are absolutely awesome. And we will catch you later.